Ye Gods by Tom Holt. Chapter 11. It was raining. "Aren't you going to take a coat?" said Mrs. Derry. "No," Jason replied, thinking of something else. "Don't be silly, Jason," said Mrs. Derry. "Here, I'll get you one." She disappeared and returned with one of Mr. Derry's anoraks. "And you aren't going out in those shoes." Through the window, Jason could see George in the golf cart, looking at his watch. Was today the serpent-haired gorgon of Sphacteria, or the 100-headed hell dragon? Not that it mattered terribly much. Once you've slain one, you've slain them all. "Look," he said, "I might be a bit late tonight. You aren't leaving this house until you change those shoes." Jason winced. "Mum," he said, "this instant." There was a brief silence, charged with strong emotion. Then Jason let out a plangent sigh, leaned the sword of Glycerion in its canvas case against the door frame, and sprinted up the stairs. When he came back, he was wearing a different pair of shoes. "Right," he said. "Now, if you don't mind." He picked up the sword case and reached for the door handle. "Hanky?" "Yes, sir," Jason growled. "Show me." "You what?" "Show me that you've got a clean hanky." Jason turned slowly round and gave his mother a look that would have turned the Gorgon to stone and had the hell dragon running in search of the nearest battered dragon's hostel. On his mother it had absolutely no effect. "Hanky," she said. "I'm going to be beheading monsters," Jason said. "I don't think I'm actually going to need hanky." "My mother," Jason said to himself, "a woman of iron will and limited vocabulary." "Look," he said, "I'm late already, so..." This time, Mrs. Derry didn't even say hanky, she just looked it. That was somehow infinitely worse. "All right," Jason snapped. "All right." He hurried back up the stairs again. A moment later, his voice floated down over the banisters. "Mum?" "Yes, dear." "Where are my handkerchiefs, Mum?" "In the airing cupboard, dear. Second shelf down at the back, where they usually are." "Oh, right." "And don't run up and down the stairs like that, Jason. It's not good for them." "Yes, Mum." Having proffered a spotless handkerchief for inspection and picked up the sword, Jason lunged for the door handle and rotated it. Even if it had turned out that Jupiter had lined up the entire race of Titans for him today, he felt things could only get easier from now on. "Jason," he froze. "Yes, Mum." "Don't forget Sharon's coming over today." "Mum." "So make sure you're back by 5:45 at the latest, because you'll need to have a bath and wash your hair." "Mum." "Have a nice day, dear. Go carefully now." "Yes, Mum." And so saying, the seed of Jove crawled out of the door and slumped across to the golf cart. "Morning, Bus." "What?" Jason hurled a sword case onto the back seat and sat down. "I said morning." "Be that as it may," Jason replied. "What's the old git want me to do today?" "Shh." George was cringing. "Keep your voice down, Bus." Jason shook his head. "If I want to call the old git an old git," he said loudly, so that a passing milkman nearly dropped a crate of gold top, "then I shall call the old git an old git. And if the old git doesn't like it, then the old git knows what he can do. All right?" George nodded. Since he was hunkered down almost under his seat, all Jason could see was the top of his head, but from its movements he could extrapolate a nod. "Fine," said Jason. "So what is the..." "Nemean lion," George whispered quickly, "followed by storm giants, then half an avalanche, followed by wrestling with time, and ending up with stealing the golden pair of truth from the Temple of the Nine Winds, which is guarded by..." "I know," Jason said. "Right, let's get on with it, and if I faint from boredom halfway through, don't forget to wake me." George put the cart in gear. "Right you are, Boss. Owen, Boss." "Yes." "Excuse me saying this, but it's good to see you back to normal, Boss. After you went over all funny, I said to myself..." "George." "Yes, Boss." "Drive the cart." George shrugged and released the brake. "Still," he added, "glad to see you've put all that defecting crap behind you, Boss. I could have told you no good would come of it." "George." "The lads were saying," George went on, and Jason wondered why saying someone's name quietly didn't seem to work when he did it. "He won't be able to keep it up, they said, not once his mum sorted him out. Right old battle-axe." "George!" "Yes, Boss." "For crying out loud, George!" Jason hissed, glancing over his shoulder at the front door of the house. "Keep your voice down." The eagle banked sharply and dived, slicing through the cold air like a worried knife. Behind her, 10 winged chariots full of spectral warriors pulled up, wobbled in thin air and changed tack. A flash of lightning narrowly missed the eagle's wingtip. Nothing left for it, the eagle realised, but to climb. Try and outmanoeuvre them. G-forces, gravitational pull, power-to-weight ratios, sup with camels, all that sort of stuff. Wasn't exactly her forte, but there it was. As the careers officer at the Theological College had told her, it is extremely ill-advised to over-specialise too early. She rose as sharply as she could, nearly pulling her own wings off in doing so, and soared. "After her!" shouted the captain of spectral warriors. "But," said his charioteer. "No buts," snapped the captain. "Follow her!" "Okay, boss," said the charioteer. Not long afterwards, 10 empty-winged chariots drifted away towards the ground, their crews having all fallen out when they tried to follow an eagle who was looping the loop. For a moment the eagle slowed down, exhausted, and rested on the crest of a strong thermal. Then she saw another 10 winged chariots emerge from behind a bank of cloud and jinked just in time to avoid a burst of lightning bolts. Grimly she started to climb. But the chariots didn't try following her this time. Instead, they split up and spread out, rising in slow circles around her. Obviously, she decided, these were the teeth of one smart dragon. Wisdom teeth. She reset her wings and dived, sending rabbits on the far distant surface scurrying for cover in all directions. When it looked as if she was certain to hit the deck with extreme force, she pulled up as hard as she could. Was that a bone in her left wing breaking, or just a few tendons? And skimmed parallel to the ground. When she cocked her head over her shoulder, she could see that the chariots were following. Good, in a manner of speaking, of course. Really good would have been if they stopped following her and gone away, but this would have to do for the time being. As well as making good starters for a dinner party, the eagle recalled, larks are good teachers. She slowed down slightly and zagged about, exaggerating the slight malfunction in her left wing. The chariots were gaining on her. They were coming up very fast now, the charioteers lashing the winged horses up to maximum effort. In fact, they were going so fast now that in less than 20 seconds they would have overtaken their quarry easily if only they hadn't flown into a railway bridge first. The eagle spread her aching wings and glided for a moment before looking around and seeing one winged chariot coming out from under the railway bridge. With a squawk of furious despair, the eagle flapped her pinions and rose up into the air, and the chariot, manned by 15 spectral warriors, all minus their helmets, followed. It didn't take long for the eagle to come to the conclusion that this bunch, unlike the others, had rather more intelligence than the average ex-mauler. They declined to crash into the branches of trees when she led the way, and when she pitched on a low branch and sat tight, they hovered overhead for a while and then set the entire forest alight with thunderbolts, making it imperative for the eagle to leave. She had managed that purely by dint of hiding between 2 large, slow-moving crows, and had been quietly sneaking off back the way she had just come when they'd spotted her and resumed their pursuit. Nothing flashy, you see, nothing clever, just plain textbook stuff. Her wings hurt like hell, and her head was dizzy from too much climbing and swooping. Meanwhile, the chariot was closing in, showing, it was true, a certain amount of circumspection, but nevertheless shortening the distance between them to an alarming extent. She tried looping a loop again, but they hadn't followed. They'd just waited till she came back straight and level again, and resumed where they'd left off. When she had hitched a ride on the undercarriage of a passing helicopter, they had simply flown alongside throwing lightning bolts until the helicopter pilot had bailed out and his craft had gone spiralling away out of control. There really wasn't a lot left she could do, except maybe try smiling at them, and that probably wouldn't work either.
"No," said the Gorgon. "Not with a G, with a D."
Jason frowned. "You what?" he said.
"My name's Gordon, not Gorgon," said the serpent-haired monster through the letterbox. "You must have got the wrong address. Gorgon with a G lives, a long way from here. Over the other side of those mountains over there, I think."
"I don't believe you," Jason said.
"Don't you?"
The flap of the letterbox quivered slightly.
"Why ever not?
Jason looked around at the large number of extremely lifelike stone statues that lined the drive of the house. Statues of postmen, statues of milkmen, statues of Jehovah's Witnesses. "I just don't, that's all," he said. "Now you coming out, or do I have to kick the door down?" The flap snapped shut, and Jason could hear a sound like a heavy stone statue being dragged against the door. Probably, he reflected, a double glazing salesman. He shrugged, strolled round to the back door, and kicked it in. It was a curiously furnished house, to say the least, what with everything in it being made of stone and there being no mirrors or reflective surfaces. But Jason had a cousin who lived in one of those new developments in Docklands, so it didn't come as too much of a surprise to him. He made his way through to the kitchen. There was a cup of coffee, literally stone cold, on the worktop. However did the poor creature ever manage to eat anything, he wondered? Or did it live on nothing but gravel? And arrived at the living room door only to find it locked. He sighed and knocked politely. "Hello?" he said.
"Go away."
"I can't," Jason said. "Sorry."
"No, you're not,"
replied the voice. Jason fingered the edge of the sword and gave the surface of his brightly polished shield a final rub. "What I mean is," he said, "I'm not doing this for fun, you know. Left to myself, I couldn't care less. If you insist on turning people to stone, that's really a matter between you and your conscience. But I've got my job to do, and I'm gonna do it. So we can either do this the hard way or the easy way." There was a long silence, and then the voice said,
"So what's the easy way?"
"You come out," Jason said. "I'll cut your head off with this sword, and that's it."
"I see," said the voice. "Let's give the hard way a shot, shall we?"
"I don't know what you're making all this fuss about," Jason said. "After all, I'm the one who should be scared. All you have to do is look at me in the eye and turn to stone, right? Me, now I've got to smash my way in, avoid looking at you, of course, and then fight with you, somehow keep myself from getting bitten by your hairstyle, cut your head off and wrap the bits up in a black velvet bag. Just ask yourself, where's the smart going on this one?" There was no reply. Jason considered this for a moment and then dashed quickly out through the kitchen and back to the front door. It was open. "Oh, bugger," Jason said. He lifted the shield and examined the reflection of his surroundings in it. There was a statue just by the door which hadn't been there before. He considered his next move carefully while whistling.
"Ouch,"
said the Gorgon shortly afterwards. "Don't blame me," Jason replied. "I gave you the choice, remember. Now this may hurt a little."
"You cheated."
Jason drew his brows together, offended. "I did not cheat," he said. "I just used my intelligence, that's all."
"You cheated."
"Rubbish."
"If you don't call pretending to wander away and then rushing back and jamming a flower pot over my head cheating," said the Gorgon, "then I do. A real hero wouldn't have done that."
Jason drew the Gorgon's attention to the fact that there was quite a few very realistic statues of real heroes lining the drive, most of them with birds nesting in highly improbable places.
"Cheat."
"You brought this on yourself, you know," Jason said. "Anybody else would have been satisfied with a couple of gnomes pushing wheelbarrows or fishing in the water, but no, you had to be different."
"So what's wrong with being different?"
"Nothing," Jason said. "So long as you don't leave large flower pots lying about the place as well. You can do one or the other, but not both. Now, the next bit is rather tricky, so if you just hold still." A single snake's head pushed its way up through the hole in the bottom of the pot and hissed spitefully at Jason.
"Bully,"
said the Gorgon. "Sticks and stones," said Jason. "Now then." He pressed his foot firmly into the small of the Gorgon's back, swung the sword up above his head, and made ready to strike. And then he saw something.
"Hey,"
said the Gorgon.
"just get on with it, will you?"
"Yes, all right," Jason said. "Just give me a minute, will you?" He was staring at the sky, or to be more precise, at an eagle. Not, let it be stressed immediately, that Jason was or ever had been a bird watcher. Whatever else he may or may not have done, his conscience was clean on that score. In the normal run of events, if a bird wasn't sitting on a plate of roast potatoes on one side and runner beans on the other, then he didn't want to know. But this bird was unusual in that it was being chased by a chariot full of spectral warriors who were throwing bits of lightning at it. He lowered the sword and stood watching.
"What?"
said a resentful voice, slightly but not unduly muffled by a 5mm thickness of terracotta.
"The hell do you think you're doing?"
"Shut up!" said Jason, preoccupied. All eagles looked the same to him, but he could have sworn he'd seen that one before. twice. "Look," he said, "just wait there a minute, will you? I won't be two shakes." Then he took his foot off the Gorgon's back and darted away. For at least 10 seconds, the Gorgon simply lay there, too bewildered to move. Then it leapt to its feet, dashed its head against the flank of a life-size marble effigy of an Avon lady, shook the fragments of flower pot out of its snakes, and bolted. Compilers of dictionaries of mythology might like to note that the orthodox view that it was never seen or heard of again is not strictly true. It was, in fact, shortly afterwards offered a job by Fabergé, staring at eggs, and became a useful and productive member of society. It was definitely the same eagle, and as he stood watching it struggling through the air, Jason remembered that he owed it a hamburger. He sheathed the sword, cupped his hands around his mouth, and shouted, "Hey!" Aboard the winged chariot, the captain's spectral warriors looked down at the figure on the ground below him. "Hold it," he said. "That's a Derry kid." The charioteer turned his head and glanced quickly. "So what?" he said. "We're way out of range up here. Let's just keep going and... What's he doing with that lump of... Oh! Jason swivelled round, broke the other arm off the fossilised political canvasser, who had at last proved useful to somebody, and let fly. The winged chariot banked violently and hurtled away across the sky like a frightened comet. The eagle fluttered for a few seconds, flopped to the ground, and turned into a girl. Jason hurried across. "Hiya, Mary," he called out. Then he stepped back, looking puzzled. "Or rather," he said, "Sharon?" Betty Lou Fisicelli polished her spectacles on her handkerchief, parked them on her oars, and drew a deep breath. She'd never done this before. Nobody now living and capable of death, had ever done this before, partly because it was the most sacred of sacred mysteries, mostly because there just hadn't been any call for it. With a slightly moistened J-cloth, she wiped away 1,000 years of dust from the imperishable bronze of the statue's face, opened the manual on her knee, and looked for the place. She was nervous. Apart from the perfectly understandable apprehension that anyone would feel about attempting the most sacred of sacred mysteries, there was also the fact that she was inside the vaults of the Delphi Archaeological Museum at 1:30 in the morning without a pass. If she got caught, what with the Greek police being as they are, she doubted if even Apollo himself could save her. Chapter 1, she read, Setting Up. With trembling fingers, she took the 2 small, shining chips of metal from the matchbox in her handbag and pressed them carefully into the statue's empty eye sockets. They fitted easily, and there was a faint click. At once, the broad bronze shield on the statue's arm began to glow, the verdigris giving off a bright green light. Then suddenly, it went black, and a row of green lines materialised from nowhere. Once she'd got her breath back, the Pythoness glanced down at the manual again. Operating the keyboard, it read. The shield had stopped flashing green lines at her. Instead, it displayed a message in sparkling green letters. It said, "Copyright, Olympian Software DLC. Unauthorised use of program material shall render the user liable to civil and criminal penalties." Then it went black again, and the statue said bleep, though without moving its lips. And then there were more letters on the screen, which read, Hi. Miss Fisicelli hoped that hi would disappear and be replaced by something rather less disconcertingly jovial, but it didn't. She dragged her attention back to the manual, operating the keyboard. Oh, very clever. Each of the fingertips of the statue's outstretched hands was a key, and to operate the uppercase, you stood on its toes. Tentatively, she touched the left index finger. The shield flickered and then read, Error. Marvellous. She looked back at the manual and pressed the left middle finger. At once, a whole shield full of words appeared, and a little green dot of light flashed on and off underneath them. That, the manual explained, was the cursor. Miss Fisicelli wondered idly what the curse might turn out to be, and studied what the manual had to say about selecting a functions menu. After a few minutes of bewildered concentration, she decided that what she wanted was feedback input scan, and then pressed the appropriate finger. The shield responded immediately. It now read, Hiya! Wouldn't it be easier, Miss Fisicelli asked herself, to try and muddle through with a chord index and a notch stick? Probably not. The manual now advised her to press the right ring fingertip and the left big toe simultaneously. She did. Oh! Miss Fisicelli apologised instinctively and looked down. No, she'd done it right. She glanced back at the screen, which now said, "Only kidding." Oh, for crying out loud. If this was the state-of-the-art in Olympian microelectronics, perhaps now was time to consider converting to Zen Buddhism. Fun this, isn't it? Painstakingly, Ms. Fisicelli selected the necessary fingertips to type in "no." The shield gave her a puzzled look and read "error." But she ignored it and went back to the right ring fingertip and the left big toe stage. She then remained aloof while the thing went through its tired little joke. Clearly, it had to be something of a microelectronics wizard if you wanted to input humour of your own into this gadget. By this stage, the shield read "ready," which was apparently what it should do. Unfortunately, the next page of the manual was missing. "Oh, nuts," said Miss Fisicelli uncharacteristically. She tried reading on, but it was hopeless. There was only one thing to do. Feeling slightly self-conscious, she stood on both the statue's feet and grabbed both of its hands. The result was incomprehensible but gratifyingly large scale. The shield shimmered with a brilliant coruscation of messages in all the known languages and alphabets alive, dead and intermediate. The statue said "bleep," not once but many times. Its left ear began printing out. After a while, things appeared to settle down, until there were only 4 words left on the shield. They were, "All right, you win." Ms. Fisicelli beamed and then wondered what to do next. Fortunately, the shield told her. "Vocal input acceptable," it said. "Speak now." "Oh," she said. The statue's lips quivered and then parted. "Hi," said the statue. Ms. Fisicelli's jaw swung open, and she forgot what she was going to say next. Probably just as well. "See in a circle, copyright," the statue went on, in a clear, high monotone like a Dalek newsreader. "Olympian software DLC. Unauthorized use of program material shall render the user liable to civil and criminal penalties." Error! But error! Scumbag! Ready! Oh, Miss Fisicelli wondered about that for a moment, and then decided that maybe you were supposed to lose your temper with the doggone thing. "Look!" "Input mode selected," said the statue. "Receiving," it added helpfully. Miss Fisicelli took a deep breath and started to talk, on the grounds that if the blasted thing said "ready" just one more time, she would quite probably scream. "Well," she said, "I'm terribly sorry to bother you like this, but none of the other divining instruments seem to work. And I tried conjuring, but of course you need an assistant for that, really, and mine just turned into illegal and left, so I wasn't able to get through that way, and I was at my wit's end. And then I suddenly thought, wait a minute, I thought there's always the holy icon, why don't I try that? And if you say error at me, I shall melt you down and have you recast as a bedstead, so be very careful." "Processing data," said the statue. "Please wait." "Sure." The statue bleeped a couple of times, coughed and sighed. "Input request command," it said. "Receiving." "Sorry?" "What seems to be the problem?" said the statue. Ms. Fisicelli relaxed and smiled. "Right then," she said. "It's sort of like this. You know I do prophecies, right?" "Receiving," said the statue. "Oh, sorry, forgot." "Yes?" "Well, usually the prophecies come from Apollo, because, well, that's his job, okay? But the last couple of days I've been getting these prophecies, well, more sort of prophetic utterances, and I'm sure they can't be from him, because, well, I just know they're not, okay? Don't ask me how I know, I just do. And, of course, they're all like sort of riddles, and I can't make head nor tail of them, and I thought perhaps, well, you might." "But," said the statue, "or rather, shoot, oh, stuff this. Input. You sure it's no trouble?" "That's what I'm here for. Receiving. Continues. Please wait." "Ready?" "The first one," said Miss Fisicelli, "came to me in my bath last night. I was just sort of, sitting there, when suddenly I could hear myself saying this, thing. Gee. Sorry?" "Error," said the statue. "Mine, not yours. Apology, input, open fire." "Shit, shoot. Sorry." "Oh," said Mrs. Fisicelli. "Oh, yes. Oh, well, what I might have said was..."
But, sorry, replied Ms. Fisicelli. It's just a bit embarrassing saying it out loud. I mean, it all sounds so funny, if you see what I...
Correlates, said the statue sympathetically. Ignore error and continue.
Thank you. It went something like... when the seed of the pig conspires with the door half open, then shall the duck's foe dwellers despair of their humorous purpose, ere Zippo, loose from his bonds, devours a bacon sandwich. That's what it said, anyway, Miss Fisicelli added. Really?
The statue bleeped thrice and burped. Computing, it muttered. Data input up tree, memory circuits active, proceeding to foot of our stairs, ready.
You mean you can understand all that stuff?
Confirming. Comparative values follow. Please wait. The lights in the statue's eyes went out and then came on again. For door half open, read when is a door not a door. When it's ajar, search, find first joke. Equivalent search to read. Output equivalent Gelos Prometheus. For ducks foe dwellers, read nice weather for ducks. Find sun info of ducks. Correlate sun dwellers. Output gods. For Zippo, read fire producer. Find Prometheus. Correlates. For seed of pig, read Jupiter is a pig. Find Jason Derry. Correlates bleep. Bacon sandwich does not copy. Suggested correlation Prometheus is hungry. Eats bacon sandwich. Search completed. Ready for new input.
Gosh, said Ms. Fisicelli. Aren't you clever? Well, the other one went. Remember that mother knows best how to deal with the smiter of centaurs, that swords cannot cut what is stronger than steel that is tempered in cocoa. Tough though the white may be, the boil wash may now be dispensed with.
The statue made no noise of any description for a very long time. Then it sniggered and said, Computing, offspring of canine female, ready?
Yes, but...
Comparative values found, the statue continued. For smiter of centaurs, read Jason Derry. For difficulty rating, read falling from chop-down tree. For unit comparative value, read Jason Derry. May be a tight little tearaway, but he's afraid of his mother. Program ends. Exit. The lights in the statue's eyes went out. The shield ceased to shine. The little pieces of metal fell from the eye sockets and landed with a soft tinkle on the ground. Ms. Fisicelli stooped and put them back in their matchbox. That, it seemed, was that for the evening. She could take a hint. She put the matchbox and the manual back in her bag, switched off the lights, and crept back up to the main gallery. Then she rummaged in her coat pocket for her skeleton key, unlocked the staff canteen door, and ultimately left the building. A useful night's work, she said to herself, and just as soon as I can get hold of Apollo, I'd better tell him all about it. Pity, though, she thought, that the statue hadn't waited to hear the third prophecy.
Ungrateful little sod.
I'm not an ungrateful little sod. Anyway, what the hell have you ever done that I should be grateful for? Sharon made a rude noise.
Oh, yeah, she said. All right. Who was it warned you about snakes in your pram, then?
If it wasn't... Nobody warned me, Jason replied angrily. I just knew.
Bullshit,
said Sharon, who was not very ladylike, even for an eagle.
If I hadn't swooped down and made shrieking noises at you, you'd have been fast asleep. As it was, you nearly swallowed your sucker, and I had to get it out of your throat with my claw. You bit me.
Good. Sharon raised one foot and made a sort of pawing motion with it before putting it back on the ground.
And what about that time when you were 3 and got stuck halfway at that big fir tree looking for phoenix nests?
I wasn't stuck, Jason interrupted. Just resting, that was. Hang on, he said, as an unpleasant thought struck him. Are you trying to tell me you've been sort of watching over me or something ever since I was a kid?
Since before you were born, more like. Nasty little brat you were then, too.
I talk about a messy little brute, Sharon remembered.
When you went up to your elbows in lion's blood, you were all smeared with melted chocolate, always stuffing yourself even then.
Look!
And I remember the fuss you used to make whenever you had to have a bath. We could hear you in the next street. It was like someone killing a pig.
Jason growled dangerously. Now look, he said.
And I'll never forget, Sharon continued,
either oblivious or unconcerned,
that time when your mother left you in your pram outside the post office with a shopping bag, and when she got back...
A true hero, they say, will never strike a woman, so it was fortunate for Jason's blood pressure that Sharon was, at least to a certain extent, an eagle. If challenged, he reckoned, he could always say that he'd been aiming for the aquiline bits.
Ow!
Jason lowered his hand, feeling that sort of furiously angry guilt that is usually reserved to small children. "It's your fault," he half snarled or half whimpered. "You started it."
"I didn't,"
Sharon snuffled. "You did." "I didn't." "I did."
"I didn't. I didn't. I didn't."
Jason was just about to rebut this line of argument when he caught sight of himself in the brightly polished shield he'd just used to fight the Gorgon with. What he saw, he recognised immediately, was an idiot. "Look," he said gently.
"I didn't."
"All right!" Jason shouted. "You didn't bloody well start it, whatever it was. Only for pity's sake, stop that bloody whimpering and tell me what's going on."
"Shan't."
"God give me strength," Jason muttered under his breath, and then revoked the request at once. They'd already done that, and look where it landed him. "I'm sorry," he said. "All right."
"You hurt me,"
Sharon whined, and rubbed her ear vigorously. It would have been more effective if it had been the right ear, of course, but pain is an extremely transient condition for supernaturals, and in some areas they have extremely short memories. This can, in fact, be very inconvenient sometimes, for example, when they break a leg. "Well, well," Jason said. "Something attempted, something done, has earned a night's repose. Now, will you please tell me—"
"All right,"
Sharon said sullenly, and she told him. She told him about the great plan to restore Gelos and thereby dislodge the gods forever, and how he was an integral part of it, and how it was so important that he develop in the right way to fulfill his destiny that Prometheus had sent his own eagle to be born and grow up as the objectionable girl next door, where she could keep an eye on him, nudge him in the right direction, drop heavy hints about hostile snakes in prams, and so forth. How— "I knew it!" Jason was furiously angry now, more so than he could ever remember being. "Isn't that just bloody typical? That's my whole life, that is." He toyed with the idea of drawing the sword and splitting the earth's crust with it, laying the Nether Kingdom open to the sunlight at a pure peak. "I mean, that's just bloody marvellous, isn't it? On the one hand, I've got Mum and Dad pushing me around, making me to be a hero and kill monsters and steal golden apples and all that crap, and now I find Prometheus and your bloody lot have been doing exactly the same all along, only different. Why can't the whole bloody lot of you just bugger off and leave me in peace?" He jumped on the Gorgon reflecting shield, denting it beyond economic repair, and kicked it away. Sharon folded her arms and looked at him, reminding him very much of his mother. "All my life," he went on, "it's been nothing but do this, do that, and nobody gives a flying fuck what I want or what I think about anything. Well, that does it. I've had enough." He looked around for something else to break, and eventually lit upon a life-size marble statue of a plumber, which he decapitated. "At least that explains why Mum's been trying to push me off on you for as long as I can." Through the red cloud of rage that was fogging up his mind shone a shiny little ray of confusion. "Did it?"
"Does it?"
said Sharon. "Of course it does." "Doesn't it? ... Of course it does. ... Oh, no, not you again. ... But ... Sharon seemed to melt suddenly. Her dumpy and exceptionally unerogenous figure blurred out in front of his eyes and grew taller and less broad. And then she wasn't there, but Mary was, and you could tell that Sharon had never really existed at all, just as a suit of clothes ceases to have any real meaning once the wearer has been removed from inside of it.
"That's the spirit,"
said Mary. "Don't be so bloody patronising," Jason managed to grumble, but his heart wasn't in it, being otherwise occupied.
"Sorry," Mary said. "I didn't mean to be. Look, Sharon's gone now, gone for good. She served her purpose, you see. There's just me now."
Just me, coming from her, was a contradiction in terms. Even so, that tiny little ray of confusion still glowed in his mind, like a distant lighthouse seen through dense mists.
"The reason for Sharon," Mary was saying, "was to get you nice and angry, just like you are now. That's what you had to do. Your mum doesn't have the faintest idea who Sharon was, neither did Jupiter. No, the whole point about Sharon was that one day you'd get so sick of the sight of her and her nasty whining voice and her incessant fault-finding that you'd finally have the guts to break free from the power in heaven and earth capable of controlling you."
Jason frowned. "You mean Jupiter?"
"No."
"Prometheus? Gelos?" Mary shook her head.
"Your mother,"
she said. Jason thought about that. "I see what you mean," he said. "Odd, I'd never seen it like that myself."
"Well, you wouldn't," Mary said. "Now would you?"
"Suppose not."
"That's the secret," Mary went on.
That's how Jupiter controls you. So if you ever snap out of it and become a free agent, then you'll have to defy her, tell her to go boil her head. And the only thing we could ever think that would make you do that was, well, a Sharon. And it's worked, hasn't it? Actually, Mary admitted, it's gone and cocked itself up, because of course you found out about it before it could happen, before the final showdown, I mean. But the effect's been the same, am I right? Jason considered. Yes, he said slowly. I think you probably are, but there was that little speck of light again. Not 3 specks or dots of light, just one. There's something wrong with all this. Is there? Jason scratched his head. Yes, he replied. Most definitely. You see, I'm not a free agent, not a bit of it. I was right the first time. You're pushing me around just as much as Jupiter's lot, and... Jason stood up straight, looked at the girl of his dreams in the eye, and saw nothing that interested him. I'm having no part of it. What's the point? I'm sorry. I said, Jason replied, where's the bloody point? You aren't Mary any more than you were Sharon. You designed Sharon expressly to get on my nose, and you designed Mary to be, well, anyway, what you are. And when you get right down to it, is a damn great eagle. And I'm very sorry, but I'm not selling my soul for something in feathers with a 6-foot wingspan and little round yellow eyes. My profound apologies, but the deal's off. Off? Off, said Jason. Go look for another hero, because I'm retiring. Got that? But Jason, don't anybody Jason me, the hero shouted. Ever again. From now on, nobody tells me what to do. Nobody. He instinctively took a step back and put his hand on the sword hilt. He was suddenly aware that he was big enough and ugly enough to do what the hell he liked, and the realization was incredibly wonderful. Mary smiled. You see, she said. Jason deflated like one of those balloons that people blow up at parties and then let go. You? Exactly, Mary said. It's worked. You defied us too. Oh. With what remained of his mental strength, Jason wrestled with the idea. Have I? Look like it from here? Really? Absolutely. Mary came towards him and put her hands gently on his shoulders. We all knew you had it in you, she said. So, Jason said, I could tell you all to go and get stuffed right now if I wanted to. If you wanted to, Mary said, yes. And nobody can tell me what to do? Nobody can tell you, Mary said softly, her lips close to his ear. But that doesn't stop them asking, does it? No, Jason said. I suppose not. Had Jason attended Professor Hagdorn's course at Wounded Elbow University, Wyoming, on predestination theory, he would have known that free will is perfectly possible in the same way as a free lunch is perfectly possible. Just not very likely, that's all. And you wouldn't, Mary whispered, want the gods to abolish laughter now, would you? Well, Jason said, no, I suppose not. And you don't really think that Jupiter and Mars and Minerva and all that lot ought to be allowed to take the universe over again, do you? I just think what a mess they made of it the last time. So you will help, won't you? Mary said.